enemies, and now we're going to look at the troops tab. It says data for enemy groups, the unit in which they appear in the game. So this is a pretty big one. And here we'll get into this battle test will be especially important. This is what I was talking about in an earlier video when I said you can actually test your battles without having to go into the game and get into a battle and all that. This is how you can just quickly test them, and I'll actually show you that here in a minute. But first, let's just go over everything here. So we've got the different names. Now, by default, it just says bat and then *2, which, you know, bat times 2 is what they're trying to go for there. And that's just, you know, saying that, hey, there's 2 bats in this enemy troop. And then here we have slime times 2, there's 2. And you could set yours up that way if you want. You could do it totally different if you'd like. It's up to you. All you have to do is change the names. If you want this to just say, you know, 2x bats or something, or, you know, whatever, 2x bat, you know, you don't have to have it be, you know, and you don't even have to say that there's 2 of them in there. This might be your only bat encounter, and you just want to say bat, or, you know, whatever, and you can put 5 bats in there, however many you think is appropriate here. So we've got the 2 slimes, we've got this 1 orc, and we've got 1 minotaur, and these are the ones that are just in here by default. There's really nothing too special going on here with any of these, but you can get pretty powerful with this. So in the general settings here, let's have this auto name button. It says gives a name based on the names of the enemies within the troop. So if you do that, it just says bat times 2. So that's a way you can set it up. I'm actually going to add another maximum here, and I know I haven't been showing this too much, but let's just add another one just to show what that looks like. So here we give a name. Right now the auto name won't do anything, but over here you can see this box has the list of enemies that we saw in the game, or in the enemies tab, and so I'll just hover over this really quick to get the tooltip. It says press the add button on the left to add selected enemies to the troop. So you might want, you know, when you click each of these, you could say, well, I'm going to add a bat, and then so it does that for you, and then maybe you want to add a slime too, and all of a sudden there's 2 different enemy types, or maybe you even want to add an orc to that as well. And then what you can do in here is you can click and drag them over here. So if you don't want the slime to be there, like maybe you want the slime to be in front of the orc or something, or you want the bat to be flying overhead, or, you know, whatever, you can freely arrange these however you'd like. And I think they kind of do it. Yeah, they kind of do like a, you'll notice here, see if there's kind of like a planes thing going on here. So you can put enemies in front of other enemies in a way, and they'll kind of layer themselves a little bit. To an extent, there's a cutoff point where they start to, about halfway up, that looks like, give or take, where they start to go behind the other character. But if you want the slime to be in front, you can just do it like that, and then, you know, the orc guy is back there, and then we've got this. So the appear halfway, whatever that said, appear halfway. So that does kind of a fading effect there, I guess. So that's kind of, I forgot you could actually do that, but if all I did over there is hold down on the left button for a couple seconds, and then that showed up. It says displays the enemies in the troop, drag an enemy to move it, right click to open the pop-up menu. So okay, you can right click also. So I think on the appear halfway, I'm not sure if that's I forget what exactly that does. I'm not sure if it's like semi-transparent, like it shows up on there, or if it means like appear halfway through a battle or something. I can't quite remember, but I think it's probably just that it does visibly. We could maybe test it and find out. Actually, there might be something worth testing. But anyway, the point there is you can just move them around, drag them. You don't have to put them in the exact order that they, you know, show up by default, whatever. And now with 3 different enemy types in here, if we do auto name, it just says, you know, bat, slime, and orc. And then maybe you had a second slime in there, so you can, you know, 2 slimes, and then you might want to drag this one over, whatever. And then do auto name again, and you can see bat, slime times 2, and then orc. So it's just going to name them like that each time. If you don't want 2 slimes, you change your mind, like, nah, never mind, then you use this remove option, and you can see the little arrow. That's actually the, you know, bracket carrots, whatever they're called, and you can see that it's just like, well, okay, it's kind of trying to act like an arrow, like it's telling you, take this from here, add it into there, and then, remove, same thing. It's like, take this from here, remove it back to the list. So you can think of it that way if it helps you remember. And then we have a clear button here. It says removes all the enemies from the troop. And then an align button says places all the enemies automatically. So if you do align, then it goes back to, setting this up in a orderly fashion, whatever. But then the only thing is, once you remove it, if you use the auto name, see, it still says slime ×2, so you're going to want to click auto name again, so it, it sets it back up, and then bat orc slime is how it auto names it. Just one of those things to keep in mind, that you will have to update that if you're using the auto name and you've been making changes and things. So if you do clear, it clears everybody out, still calls it back orc slime, auto name, deletes it back to that. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that really quick, so I'll go ahead and if you decide you don't need an extra one, like you've made too many, you can change maximum back down again to 4 by default, and it gets rid of that empty one that you're not using. So change BG changes the background images for editing and battle tests. So so if you want to see, I don't think this applies to the actual, it says for editing and battle tests. So I don't think this applies to the actual battle background, if I remember right. But maybe it does. I can't quite remember. But anyway, at least for sure because I think the battle background is decided on a per map basis, if I remember right, and not in here. But I think if you just want to see what it looks like with different stuff in here while you're doing tests, you can change that. Maybe you'll just get bored of this grasslands after a while, or maybe you do want to see what it's going to look like in an actual area in your game. Like maybe you want, Demon Castle. Well, maybe that's not a very good example, but okay, we'll do the decorative tile in Fort 1, maybe. That doesn't look good. Fort 2, no, it doesn't look good either. Let's see. We'll find something here. Crystal? Nope. Demon Castles? Oh, that's too weird looking. I don't know. Somewhere in here. Gotta be something that'll work. That looks pretty good. Temple? Yeah, let's just go with Temple. That looks pretty cool. Alright, so yeah, that's sorry for the delay there, but this is what you can do. You can set it, and then you can see it's going to change the look of the background and everything, and then and that'll actually change it when you do the battle test as well. And then you can position your bats a little differently, like, they're too hard to see right there, let's put them up here, and then, because they're flying around. And you can offset them too. You don't have to be straight in a line. However you want to add some interesting visual distinction and things. So I'm just going to hit battle test here, and then you can see really quick what that looks like. So you can just jump right in, and now you can set up your different actors here that are going to be in the party. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can say, I want to test it with, if you want, you could do a party of a bunch of heralds. So, it's all herald, but but you can set your settings here. Changing your actor, that's going to do it. And then you can even change the level too. It says level, so if you want to test them at level 23 to see how they fare against a lowly bat, you can do that. Or and that would go into, maybe if you were testing something like I was talking about before, the enemies, where it's like, once they reach level 20, then they get new skills. Or if you wanted to test them at level 21 or something, you could easily do that here without having to level your party up to level 21 or set a bunch of events in the game that you have to interact with to level up your characters or whatever. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You can just, do it right here. And then you have this initialize button here. It says initialize the actor's level and equipment. So if you just want to set them back to level 1 again, real quick, you can. Otherwise, you can actually go in here and change their equipment. It says weapon and armor that the actor has equipped in the battle test. So if you want to test them with, your so far it's just none or sword, but if you wanted to test them with some really stronger sword that you made for later in the game or something to see how strong it is, you could do that here once you've added it in the equipment, weapons and armors and so forth. And then over here you can see what their character stats are. So it displays status computation based on the level and the equipment. So this will actually be a pretty nice way to see what your character stats are at any given level. As you can see, as you increase this, then all the stats go up and everything. And then same with the different weapons and armors and stuff. As you equip them with different things, it'll boost all these stats in here, and then you can have a good sense of where your character is at when they're at level 27 with a certain set of equipment or that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm just going to do initialize for now, just to show you what the test looks like, and then you hit OK, and then it pops up like straight into the battle, and it just says bat emerged. And so since we haven't actually looked at the battle system at all yet, let's just have a look here briefly at the start here. So when you first go into a battle, you have to choose between one of these two options, either to fight in the battle or to try and escape. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if this escape option is 100% of a success or not. It may not be. It probably is in the test here, I would guess, but maybe not. And then there's the fight option would be the start of it, and you can change these terms as well if you don't like calling it fight or escape. Maybe you could do flee or whatever. You could change all that if you'd like. So if you click on that, then it shows you here using this little cursor here. You've got Herald, so that's the character that's acting right now. This is their health meter, their magic meter, and their tech points, or TP meter, whatever you want to call it. And that's just telling you like it's Herald's turn. So his this is what your action of choice is here. So you basically just have to select which ones of these you want to do. If you want to use a magic skill, like anything we set up in the skills tab, then that goes in the magic section. And you can see here what I was saying before about being in a completely different menu when you have a magic skill going on. It gets its own magic menu. And now there was no description, but if there is one, it would show up here in this section. And then you can see the cost here is blue to correlate to the MP cost. If it was a green number, it would be for the the tech points, the TP. But since these are magic skills, they're just using, that's showing you, hey, it costs 5 magic points and you've got 90, so you can use it quite a few times, whatever. So, and if you just right click, you'll go back out. And then the guard ability, it just skips right to the next character to, choose their option. So Herald will be guarding for this turn. And then, maybe Solo Trees doesn't have any magic, so just use an attack maybe. And then here you can see, you could choose either down here, Bat A or Bat B, or you can actually click, I thought you could, maybe you can't. I thought you could actually click on these. I think that was a plugin that I'm thinking of that lets you do that. But so you do actually want to use this menu down here to click which one you want to target. So if you want to target Bat A, that's that one. Bat B is this one over here. So we'll target Bat B with that attack, I guess. And this is all you do with, with the basic battle system. Marcia could use an item maybe. But nobody's lost any hit points or magic points or anything yet, or gotten any status effects. But here again, you want to put in a description so the player knows, like, what's Magic Water do again? Or what's Dispel Herb do? Unless you make it super clear in the name, like, restores MP or whatever, then you would want a description. And you don't have to make it that clear in the name as long as you have a decent description that tells the player what's going on with it. So we can just attack the bat. And then maybe Lucius will use, all he's got is a healing magic, so never mind. So maybe he'll guard too. And you can see they guard, and then this is kind of like just a combat log telling you what's happening. So you can see there it said miss, they take no damage, so that has to do with the evasion rates and all that. And then once, the players have all taken their actions, the enemies have all taken their actions, then it goes back to this again. We can do escape option. Okay, so it does fail in here. I wasn't sure if it did. I couldn't remember. It said Herald's party has started to escape, and this is, however, it was unable to escape. So you can change the terminology here, the wording, if you don't like how that's worded. But there's a good example of they tried to escape but failed, and now the enemy team, opponent team, whatever, they get to freely attack because as a result of that. So, and here we can see the hit points have gone down, and you can see the little gauge here underneath. It helps you get a good sense of where they are in their maximum amount versus their current amount. So, like Lucius has lost about that much of his bar versus so maybe it's like at 80% or something now of his max. And then as they gain TP and all that, so on and so forth. But anyway, you get the idea. So that's the easy way to do a battle test, and it allows you to quickly just go in, test something that needs to be maybe looked at a little further, or you just want to make sure, like, okay, let me just test against the Minotaur really quick, versus having to set a whole bunch of stuff up as events, or get to that point in the game that you've already had it set up. You don't have to manually do all that. You can just quickly test everything in here. Now, the real power of this troops section, aside from all these things that we've already covered, is down here in this battle event section. It says events run during battle, set up dialogues with the enemy, etc. So pretty much anything in here that you do, you can see a new event page, copy event page. These are very similar to what it looks like on an event when you're putting it on the map. And anything that you do in here, if you right click and go to new, this is all the same event commands that we see in in a normal event on the map. So there's a ton of stuff you can do inside of this. It's basically events you can completely run in battles, if you really want to look at it that way. So you can make entirely scripted things. You don't even have to rely on, let's just go back to the enemies tab really quick here. You don't even have to rely on these attack patterns if you don't want. You can take this off of here, and then you could set something up in here, especially using these conditions. We'll just look at that now because that's prevalent. It says conditions to start the event. The contents will be run only when all the set conditions have been met. If there are multiple event pages meeting conditions, the contents will be run in order from lower to higher numbered page. So the lower numbered page will get priority, and as you go to the right here, as they get more page tabs going, it will, prioritize them, the next one that it gets to, with the conditions met. So, and then over here we have span. It says interval during which the event contents are allowed to run. Battle, turn, or moment are the options. And it says battle is run only once in the battle. Turn is run only once per turn. And moment, this says repeat while the conditions are met. So, by default, the conditions are don't run, so it won't have any conditions to do that. But if you click in there, then we get this conditions dialog here. We can see turn end. So it says starts when all of the actions of enemies and actors have finished. So if you want something to happen at the end of a turn, then you can do that. And then here we have a turn box. Now we saw this one earlier in the enemy section, but now here it says starts when the specified turn has been surpassed. Specifies the turn count with A plus B times X, or same as before. Says if A equals 1 and B equals 3, the condition will be met at turn 1, 4, 7, and so on. So just like it worked with the enemies section, it'll work here as well if you want something to happen every couple of turns. And then it says turn 0 means that the event starts before command entry. So turn 0, if you use that here, just like this, it will happen basically at the start of battle. And then you could say, okay, well, I want it to start at the start of battle, and then if you do 0 here, then it just happens at the start of the battle, and that's it. But you could also do every turn. So you could do at the start of the battle, and then, every turn thereafter, it would do it if you just put a 1, or every 2 turns after that, or every 3 turns, so on and so forth. So as long as the battle, is going on. But here, this is, like I was saying before, if you wanted to get rid of that, attack skill that the enemy had, and you can actually control it this way. So you could set it up like on turn 1, and then every 2 turns after that, this Minotaur is going to attack, or whatever. And because you could do, just for example, I'll just click OK, and then I'll go in here, and you could go new, and I think there's an option for, let's see if I can think of what it would be. Character picture screen. Let's see. Somewhere in here. Battle. Let's see. Enemy transform. Force action. That's the one it was. Okay, I was trying to remember which it was called. But yes, in this battle section, we have a lot of options that are good for, controlling things in battles and things. And you can do, change their hit points, change their magic points, change their, TP, all that, tech points. You can change their state, so you can give them a specific status effect or whatever. You can make them all recover their full health and all their, ailments and things. You can make extra enemies appear mid-battle. This is how you would do that. Makes the enemy who has the appear halfway option. Okay, so that is what that was for. That answers that question. We didn't even have to test it. When you have appear halfway, like we saw earlier, with the orc, when I was looking and wondering what it was, that's what this is for. So what you could do is you could say, okay, on turn 5 or something, then make that orc appear or something, something like that. So if the battle drags on, then, it would do that. Enemy transform is another interesting one. It says transforms the enemy. Hit points and magic points will not be changed. So they change, their type. So maybe you'd want to change their bat into an orc or something, but their health wouldn't change. So that's the other thing with that. But you can show a battle animation. So if you want something specific to flash on the screen, maybe there's a crazy interference of fireball or something, whatever you want to do. Abort battle you can do. So if you want the battle to end abruptly, you can do that. So it just says exit the battle. So maybe there's something that happens and you want a battle to end on turn 3 no matter what, even if the enemy's not defeated or that sort of thing. You would do that here. But this force action one is the one we want to look at. It says force the specified action. So you can do force, the subject. So you pick the enemy. In this case, it's Minotaur. And there's only, you see, it says number 1 is Minotaur and then question mark, question mark, question mark. So you can have up to 8 different enemies in one troop. So, but these are all question marks because there are no other enemies currently in our Minotaur troop except just this one. So the only one that's actually possible to choose right now is the Minotaur. So, and you could also force the actors to do something as well, and not just the enemies. So that's another interesting way you can do it. But then here, you could do attacks. So you could say, okay, force attacks, and then you can even change the target. This is target of the action when the selection is required. So you could say last target, random. So last target would just be whatever one that they attacked last time, or, in this case it would be attack. Whatever one they targeted last time, they would do it. So if you wanted them to just repeatedly hit the same character over and over again, you could do last target. Random would be, probably how it would be a little bit better to have it work is just do it random. You don't know what they're randomly going to attack. They might attack somebody. And then here we have indexes. So I believe these are, if I remember right, it's party members if they're, but I'm not sure if that goes to enemies or not because there's 8 of them. But I would think it would be the person in party slot 1 or the person in party slot 2 or, things like that. But I'm not sure. I thought 4 was the maximum party members you could have in your party in a battle, but I could be wrong about that. But anyway, so that's either party members. I would assume that would be 1 through 4 would be for party members. And then actors, if they want to target enemies, then it would be, enemies potentially 1 through 8 like we saw up here, where there's 8 possible slots here. So anyway, so that's the way you could do it. You could do last attack, random, for example, and then hit OK. And then, so every, first turn and then every 2 turns after that. So turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, turn 7, turn 9. You could force the Minotaur to attack somebody at random in the player party. So that's another way where if you really want to fine-tune the control of things, you can directly specify what your enemy's party, their troops are going to do. And you could do it on a per character basis. So this is just for the Minotaur. You could have a slime in the party and they could do something totally different or, that sort of thing. So that's how you would set that sort of thing up. So I'll just go ahead and delete that out for now. And then we'll look at the rest of these. In addition to turn, you could also do it based on enemy HP. And it says, starts when an enemy's HP is less than or equal to the specified percentage. if you want to start the event just before the enemy dies, add a mortal state temporarily on the battle start. So that's a tip there that's pretty nice. So you could have something happen. It's like, well, you defeated that enemy. Well, you want it to happen right when the enemy dies. Well, then, set that immortal state temporarily, and then, go from there, and it will happen at, whatever, when that triggers, it would take place. So again, here you can pick which enemy you want to, for the condition to work on, and then the percent or below. So when they get to half their health or less, then they'll do, whatever else down here you tell it to do. And then the actor HP, same thing, just except for the player's party. So Sergeant actor's HP is less than or equal to the specified percentage. So this might be useful for things like where you want to script a scene where the player maybe is in a battle that's too strong for them or something, and then after that you might want there to be like a cutscene or a scene rather than have the battle end with a game over or something. Maybe it's like a scripted scene where you're just going to say, oh well, it's like we can't defeat this enemy, and then it kicks you back out of battle or something. Then you could set that up like this if you wanted. If character Harold is half health or less, then abort the battle and show some text and whatever else you want to do there. And then here again, we have the power of switches that we can call to bear here. So it can be based off of whether or not an enemy, whether or not a switch has been triggered somewhere else in the game, then, and this is something you could do to, like, again, like I was saying earlier with the example with the bats, where it's like, oh, you defeated their, cave or whatever, or you defeated their dungeon and wrecked their home. Well, then, then you could say, then you could set up two different sets of battle, conditions and events and things based on that. So you could say, like, well, normally maybe your bats will just attack every time, but once they reach this condition and this switch is on, then all of a sudden they follow these rules instead, or these, whatever. And just like with regular events, you can make multiple event pages, multiple conditions, multiple spans. So you can have one thing set up here that's like condition based that only works one time in battle, or you can have something that works every single turn, or whatever, however you want to do it. And then this one again is for when the conditions are met, it keeps happening basically until the conditions aren't met. So that's what moment is for. So really, you can see this is where it really, really like blows the doors off of the restrictions and things. You've got a lot of power here in the events. You can pretty much do anything, just about anything in the events that you can do in a normal event on a map. So you've got a lot of capabilities here and a lot of possibilities to really make your maps and your encounters, really make your enemies rather and your encounters really distinct and interesting to engage with, instead of just the simple, boring, they attack every turn and then you beat them up and the end. Like you gotta, well, you don't have to, but it's more interesting for the player if you provide some variety and versatility in what the enemies can do to make them feel a little bit more realistic, alive, like they have some purpose instead of just existing to get beat up by your player. And just giving them a little bit more variety too, making your battles more interesting, having them do things that the player wouldn't necessarily expect, like like we talked about briefly earlier. Like if they use a certain ability or attack or something, like have there be a backlash for that, or that sort of thing, instead of just a straight damage. You could even have some kind of retribution for the player using basic attack on them, and then it's like, oh, you want to use a basic attack, then you're going to get just instantly retaliated against big time, and that way the player is forced to find a more creative way to go about defeating your enemies or that sort of thing. So so that that pretty much covers enemies and troops. And then we can get into, some future things down the road. This is probably I'm guessing the last video portion I'll be able to record for, for the year, for 2020, but we'll see here. But hopefully you guys enjoyed all that, and I appreciate you taking the time. So I guess with that, I'll see you in the next video.